Let's bring in national trial attorney Michael Jaafar to talk about what we've seen so far in this case. Michael, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Nice to see you. So I want to ask you about this. Ted and I have been talking about it this morning, and the prosecution now is in a situation where she has to go back, take a look through a presentation, make sure there are not any errors, and if there's another objection or the judge sees some kind of error, he is going to exclude that presentation. That is not a good spot to be in as a prosecutor.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, they've put a lot of time into this case, have been putting it together for years. And so first they had some momentum, positive momentum with the judge, where the judge said, hey, some of these lyrics can come in as long as they pass the foundational test and the relevancy test. But now, you know, they kind of they take a step back. So I agree with you. Yeah, this is not a great place for the prosecution to be in this case, especially after they've gotten all the national media and attention, and pretty much everybody in that industry is looking at this case. I do agree with you.
What's your take on the judge's ruling that the lyrics can come in? I mean, there's a lot. There's the argument that, hey, I can get up and say whatever I want if I'm creating a piece of art. This is music at the end of the day, and it's widely known that some of the artists in this genre sort of overplay to get more street cred, and it helps sell albums. There's nothing illegal about that. There has to be more there, Michael, does there not? What's your opinion on the judge's initial ruling? And he did, you know, he couched it. He's going to go through it as the trial moves forward. But a lot of heads were turned when he said, yeah, you can bring in the lyrics.
You know, Ted, I agree with the judge's ruling, because the judge did say, he prefaced it by saying, as long as it passes, as long as the things you're going to bring in are going to pass the foundational tests and the relevancy tests, and their probative value outweighs their prejudicial value, I will rule in favor of bringing in the lyrics. Because the defense attorneys just wanted there to be a blanket ban. No matter what he says, you can't bring it in. I mean, that's crazy, right? If you really think about it, imagine in any context, no matter what my client says publicly, you have to have a blanket ban because my client was saying it for money. He was selling records. I mean, it's crazy that they even took that position. So I think the judge's ruling is right on point. And this case is not about his lyrics, right? It's kind of got overblown for a good reason, because this is a seminal situation in the prosecution of rap artists, right? But this case is not because of his lyrics. They did not bring a case and build a case based purely on his lyrics. They have testimony. They have co-defendants who have flipped. They have they've recorded conversations. They have actual crimes. They have a rented car, and the rented car was used and forensically was tracked to an actual murder. They have all of that, and then some of the lyrics are very specific about specific crimes, and they kind of form as a little bit of a glue on certain parts of the case, but other parts of the case stand alone, having nothing to do with his lyrics. So I think the judge's ruling is right. Frankly, I'm shocked that Young Thug is shocked that the judge made this ruling. And yeah, other rap artists, listen, if you've committed a crime, and I hate to say this, if you've committed a crime, don't rap about it. It's really very simple.
Yeah, we have some lyrics that we can put up on the screen that they're going to use. Young Thug's lyrics in question: I never killed anybody, but I got something to do with that body. That was that 2018 song called Anybody. Also, you want to be slime? Go catch you a body. That 2021 song, Really Be Slime. So these are the lyrics that they're talking about here in this case. And I've been reading a lot of articles about this. Some people were talking about Johnny Cash and some of the lyrics that he had, you know, back in the day. And people are saying, well, they never used those lyrics, but then again, was that tied to a crime?
There was no dead body.
Exactly.
Yeah, shot a man in Reno just to watch him die. But you needed a guy dead in Reno, right?
Yes.
That's the part of the equation that we don't have.
It's all about relevant, Michael, and what's relevant in a case. And that's what the judge is saying, that this could possibly be relevant, or that's what the prosecution is saying, that this is going to be relevant. And the judge said, okay, let's take a look at this, see how this trial goes along. And if it's relevant, it is going to be allowed. Any more take on that, Michael?
No, yeah, I fully agree with your take. I mean, you brought up the Johnny Cash example, right? Ted said you need a dead man in Reno for you to even have that being relevant. Yes, if Johnny Cash forensically was tagged to renting a vehicle for somebody to go to Reno and murder somebody, and then he wrote a song and saying, I helped somebody rent a car and go to Reno and kill somebody, I mean, it would be relevant, right? But again, this case is not about his lyrics, and the racketeering indictment is not, look at what he said on this record, we are charging him. That's just not the case. They've been building this case for years, and he's a part of it. So, and so that's my opinion.
All right. Again, we are expecting the jury to be back around actually about 1:45 Eastern time, and once they're back, we'll see how the prosecution does as they take two on the opening statement. Right now, we'll get a break in here. We're going to turn our attention to South Carolina, where convicted double murderer Alec Murdaugh returns to court versus bringing Michael Jaafar, because he's watched it along with us throughout this whole process too. Michael, we saw this play out in the federal case where he sat and he listened to all of the victims, including the Satterfields. It's going to be a repeat here today or tomorrow. Do you think a guy like this is he listening to anything during the, sometimes you get the feeling that some defendants are affected. I mean, sometimes they'll cry, sometimes you could just feel, all right, this person gets it. I don't know if I think he gets anything.
So my opinion on this, a little bit controversial. So some of the most talented attorneys in the country, when you dig back into their background, I haven't dug into his background, but when you dig into their background, they have, theater majors and drama majors and acting majors, and they were actors, and they worked for theater companies, right? They're really good at being emotive, crying on the dime, and putting on a show, right? They can be phonies. They can, I mean, you heard one of the testimony from one of his victims who said he was nice to me, he was cordial to me, he was very respectful to me, and while he was doing that, he stole every dime I had. So you don't know what you see. This person might just be an empty box, or he might have some solace of a human or a soul inside of him. He was in the throes of an opioid epidemic, and that made him possible of really horrendous things. He's just the things he's admitted to are already horrendous things, and he would probably never see the light of day, even if the murder was not in question, right? So I don't know. I don't know what I'm looking at when I see him. I see his eyes, but I don't know what's behind them. But there are very talented people who can put on a show and convince you of anything in the world that they want to convince you of in a room, and you don't know what's real. We still, he's convicted for murdering his child and his wife. He says he didn't do it, but his attorneys say we don't know who did it. So I don't know, Ted. Tough world.
Michael, what do you think we might hear from some of the victims in this case? We're hearing the adult son of Miss Satterfield, who was the housekeeper for the Murdaughs for a number of years, for over 2 decades, that the adult son of Miss Satterfield is going to speak. We've kind of heard they're going to say things to him like, "You're a thief." What do you think we're going to see?
When the lights are bright and you're a young person and you're a shy person, you shirk a little bit, and that's understandable. Her children they break your heart. That son right there, we've seen him on TV and in the Netflix documentary for years. He breaks your heart, because stealing money from somebody is one thing, but stealing money from that person right there who has trusted you is another thing. So I don't know what, that's a great point. I kind of riveted to see how it'll be. But these sentencings, they have a good healing effect on people. So I hope that this kid goes in there and says exactly what's in his mind, what's in his heart, because every single time, you got to remember something, every single time he's been in a conversation with Alex Murdaugh, there was a power imbalance. Alex Murdaugh was from a legal dynasty in South Carolina. He was older than him. He was way more polished, way more eloquent. So he wasn't able to. I'm sure that those conversations between those two were just one-sided. Alex Murdaugh telling him something, and the kid saying, "Yes, sir," and then Alex Murdaugh telling him, "I've got a call, I've got to run," and then hanging up. I'm sure that's how they all went. So this is a completely different situation. He's going to be talking to Alex Murdaugh while Alex Murdaugh is handcuffed and in a jumpsuit and not able to respond, and he's got police officers around him. So he's going to feel protected when he talks to Alex Murdaugh. What he says, it's just a matter of how he feels that day. He'll have a script written. He'll have reviewed it and rehearsed it. We don't know if he's going to follow it.
The 27-year sentence that is going to be served concurrently with the federal charges, and all of these are going to be mushed in together. Part of the deal was he has to serve at least 85%. That's 23 years. He is in his 50s. If he could just beat these murder charges, then he might have a little light at the end of the tunnel, and you get the feeling that's what he is going for, and that's what his team is going for. What are your thoughts about him getting a new trial because of what allegedly happened with this county clerk? And then, if, let's say, he does get a new trial, why would anyone think a second bite at this is going to return a different verdict for this guy?
We saw a case recently where the conviction was overturned by the Supreme Court of that state, and I was shocked that they did it. And everybody, every pundit, including me, said this guy's going to get acquitted because there's no evidence basically linking him anymore because of the overturning by the Supreme Court. But he still got convicted, right? We were all shocked. In this case, I think even a new trial, I think the evidence is overwhelming against him, right? Because there's evidence that he lied. There's evidence that he was in the throes of an opioid, addiction, and now he's confessed to stealing money from people. So his credibility's gone, completely shattered, and the public has totally turned against him. So to answer your question, Ted, I think the chances of him getting a new trial are small. I was shocked that the judge recused himself, Judge Newman. I thought that was a right decision, by the way, by the judge. I was just shocked. I applauded him for it. But with a new judge, I think a new judge is going to come in there, and I don't think he's going to get a new trial. That's my analysis. But even if he does, the chances of him in his new trial being acquitted of this are, I would put them in the 1% category.
Okay, Michael, well, thank you.
Yeah, I know Eric Bland told our Julia Janae on closing arguments how the prosecution did consult with him during these plea negotiations. Do you think it was a fair deal, Michael, that because let's face it, this was going to be a long, arduous trial. He had already admitted to everything during the criminal trial against him. This guilty plea, good idea for everybody? Your thoughts?
I think it's a win for Alex Murdaugh because it gives him a tiny chance at redemption if he gets a new trial. And maybe there's new evidence they show. We don't know. What if there's new evidence that maybe somebody else was involved and somebody else did do this? I'm just saying, right? So I think it was a great deal for Alex Murdaugh. I was puzzled by the prosecution doing this deal, and I'll tell you why I was puzzled, because they agreed to give him only a couple of years more than Corey Fleming got, and Corey Fleming was only a co-conspirator on a couple of these fraudulent thefts, whereas Alex Murdaugh was intentionally stealing, was the mastermind of stealing from a bunch of people, right? So I was shocked, but then I thought about it. You know, if you're the prosecution, you live in that community, you've seen your community go through a lot. Do you want to go through another trial? Do you want to put everybody through it for a guy that has pretty much no chance at ever seeing the light of day? And if he does see the light of day, it's going to be after a new trial that's granted with a jury of his peers who look at him and say, you know what, you did not murder your son and daughter. So I think in hindsight, I think it was a right call by the prosecutor. I think it was a right call for everybody. I think as much as you can have in this situation, a win-win.
All right, thank you, Michael. Yeah, this is a negotiated plea. We'll see what the judge decides tomorrow, the 27 years on the negotiated, but the judge has said that he wants to hear from the victims first before he makes his final decision. Will he get 27 years? Be interesting. Well, all right, Matt, thank you so much. Let's bring in National Trial Attorney Mike Jaafar to talk about the developments so far in this case. Okay, Michael, you just heard Matt Johnson's report talking about this case. What are you seeing here? So many twists and turns in this one, too.
Yeah, I'm riveted by it. It's kind of baffling. So, you know, when you see stuff like this, I have to take it back, like from a 1,000-foot view. I'm always impressed with our legal system. I'm always impressed with our system of justice. I'm always impressed with the diligence. And, you know, I know prosecutors and former prosecutors, and I'm always, you know, there's always like the type of person that does this type of job, and investigators, and look at the people, you know, escorting this person through. And I'm just impressed with it. I'm riveted by it. And there's like, you're not going to get away with anything in the United States anymore. So all criminals beware. You're not getting away with anything. I mean, it's insane.
And if you do something, hire Michael Jaafar. He'll do his best to work his way through the system. This was likely going to be delayed anyway, even without the attorney switch up. But as time goes on, does it? Well, first of all, how hard is it to read in on something of this magnitude? So these two are gone. Two new attorneys come in a case like this. It's a high-profile case, and keep in mind, this went years where there were no arrests. There were investigations going on and interviews going. The discovery here is going to be voluminous. It is voluminous. How difficult is it to get up to speed to effectively represent this guy?
It's so awful, Ted. It is so bad. The answer to your question is, it's impossible to ever truly catch up to speed in a way where you are going to advocate for somebody in the same quality with where you would have advocated for them had you been involved from the beginning. We all know that in our profession, the minute that you fire your lawyer or your lawyer quits, everything goes haywire. I don't really recall a situation where a lawyer quit in the middle. I'm sure it has happened, but I don't recall a situation where a lawyer has quit in the middle of a criminal case and the defendant succeeded. I just don't. I'm sure it has happened, but I can't recall it, right? So it's almost impossible to really catch up to speed. So to answer your question, the time it would take, I mean, it would take months. It would take months. And then at that point, you're just reading and reading. And while you're reading and while you're trying to understand, more developments happen, and then your client gets upset, and your client expects you, hey, you're wearing a suit, you're a lawyer, you should know this stuff, and hey, I'm trying to figure this out, buddy. So it'll take months to get caught up to speed, and even then, it won't be. It'll always be suboptimal.
Michael, you were just talking about, you know, committing a crime. You were saying that too, Ted. The technology these days, the way it can track people every single place that you go. Yeah. Last segment, we were talking about Alex Murdaugh's case. I mean, they had that cell phone video where he had denied that he was there at the scene, at the dog kennels, but then they were able to open up the phone and they were able to see that video that Paul never even was able to send to his friend, but they got that video placing him at the scene, and then he had to work around that at trial. I mean, you are right. You cannot really get away with things anymore. You have to really outsmart the system some way.
Yeah, you know what? We were analyzing a case here a couple of months ago where the man was accused of murdering his wife in Orlando, and the prosecutor introduced into evidence something that I never even thought about. He said that her cell phone metadata showed that she did not walk up the stairs the night before, and she always walks up the stairs because her cell phone metadata shows that she walks up the stairs every day around 11 o'clock, and she didn't walk up the stairs at all. So she was already dead, right? And he was able to introduce that. And I was thinking to myself, oh my God, you know, in 1982, if you were standing accused of murdering somebody, such a thing never existed. Yeah. And we were all amazed when DNA evidence was brought into the picture. But this is a whole different thing, and it's only getting worse for criminals and better for non-criminals.
Exactly.
Yeah, and great for prosecutors.
Really great.
Sure.
Yeah, really good for prosecutors.
The old phone tracking our every move. Moment. Let's switch gears here, and while we have you, Michael, we're following the story out of Arizona. Former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin stabbed in prison.
Chauvin was convicted in 2021 for the murder of George Floyd and has been serving time in a federal correctional institution in Arizona. This is a medium security prison that allegedly has been plagued by security lapses as well as staffing shortages. Chauvin was stabbed on Friday by another inmate.
A spokesperson for the Minnesota Attorney General's office said that Chauvin is expected to survive. The Bureau of Prisons released a statement saying, in part, responding employees contained the incident and performed quote-unquote life-saving measures before the inmate, who, they didn't name him, was taken to the hospital for further treatment and evaluation.
So far, there has been no updates on Chauvin's condition, but we will bring you any developments as soon as we get them.
Michael, do you think I'm a skeptic? Staffing shortages? I don't know about that. This seems to be one of those maybe, oh, we turned our back kind of things. And it's funny, a lot of people's reaction was like, wow, it took a long time for him to be attacked in prison, because let's face it, of people with a target on their back, Derek Chauvin, I think, is example number one. Your thoughts, Michael?
Yeah, I agree with you, Ted. I don't like this. I don't like it at all. Listen, he's a former police officer. He's serving his time. The public has weighed in. He's been convicted of murder. I mean, I don't like it. This doesn't do good for us as a society to have any inmate to be stabbed. You're right. He had a target on his back. And you know what? There's nothing we can do to remove the target from his back, but at a very minimum, you got to protect him in jail. He's completely defenseless. He's in jail. I mean, it's not a status of honor for us as a society to have a former police officer or anybody to have a target on their back and be stabbed in jail. We can, some people look at it and they snicker and they say, yeah, he deserves, you know what, give me a break. The guy's doing his time, he's totally fallen from grace. I mean, to see the guy defenseless and stabbed in prison, I'm willing to go on the record and say, I don't like this at all. It stinks. The fact that it happened was just, I didn't like it at all. I agreed with his conviction, but you don't have to disagree with the conviction to say he shouldn't be stabbed. I mean, give me a break. I think some people, hey, I would like to see the people, the people who were responsible for protecting the inmates, I'd like to see them brought up on some sort of a misdemeanor charge for some sort of malfeasance. Somebody in your charge got stabbed. You clearly broke protocol. Somebody broke protocol for that person to have somebody even have the ability to stab them. So yeah, I just don't like it.
Yeah, at least to have them answer some questions as to exactly what took place here. Obviously, there'll be an investigation, an internal one, and then we'll have to see what happens.
Yeah, that was a great point. As a society, this is not how we can operate, and you can just see that someone is taking advantage of the situation to try to get notoriety. I stabbed Derek Chauvin. Oh, well, all right, great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, Michael, thank you so much. Welcome back to Court TV Live. Opening statements are set to resume at any moment in the trial for rapper Young Thug in Atlanta today.
Young Thug, whose real name is Jeffrey Williams, faces charges in a sprawling RICO case of being part of a criminal street gang named YSL. He and 5 other co-defendants deny the charges against them.
And we're going to get you into court when the judge is on the bench. But meanwhile, we want to bring in national trial attorney Mike Jaafar to talk about this case. Michael, it took so long to seat a jury in this case. A lot of jurors had said it would be hardship because this trial is supposed to last several months. That's always a challenge here, to try to find jurors that are able and willing to serve for so many months without any hardship. Kind of just talk about that situation and how then they were able to finally seat a jury in this case.
Yeah, we were just talking in the prior segment about our justice system and how awesome it is, and how how the gears grind forward, how the gears grind forward, and how the members of our system work so hard for even the smallest cases. Right, I've seen even very small cases without a high profile, where the prosecution and the defense attorney, they work for weeks and weeks and weeks to seat a jury. So in this specific situation, the difficulty they have to deal with is they have to deal with politics. They have to deal with local politics. They have to deal with national politics. They have to deal with, a jury pool that's going to be very, very in favor of one side or the other. And, I've been to Atlanta. I've been to Atlanta many times. I know how it's a very unique ecosystem. And so seating a jury for a case like this, I would say it's not possible for it to be harder than in any other case. It's very difficult. So these months and months and months that go on, when you seat a jury, you have to really go through the logistics, and you have to find people in the right places, and you have to just make sure that you've picked somebody where you're not going to have a mistrial, and you have to redo the case again. Jurors could be tampered with, and if you go into, for example, in the inner city, and we've seen it in other cases, obviously outside of Atlanta, where jurors were actually tampered with when the defendants were local criminals, right? When local criminals were, like the Cocaine Cowboys case in Miami, right? Years later, some of the jurors went to jail many years after an acquittal. They went to jail. They actually admitted to receiving bribes and payoffs. And I kind of see that dynamic here. And that's why prosecutors are being very wary and very careful, because they know that jurors, if they pick a juror that's vulnerable economically, that juror could be tampered with, and then the whole entire system, is thrown out. And so that's really the conversation behind the scenes with these prosecutors is, we got to get jurors that aren't going to be bribed, and that's pretty much the challenge. And people are going to have undue influence exerted on them if we pick the wrong people, and if we don't protect them, we don't protect their the confidentiality of who they are. So the logistics are very, very difficult. If you're just trying a murderer, no one's going to bribe anyone and tamper with a jury when a murderer is on trial. This is different. This is a cultural thing, right? And so you're delving into a culture, and you're creating kind of like a civil war within that culture. So I truly sympathize with the difficulty for both sides, the defense and the prosecution. This is a cultural battle that they're doing right now. And so those are very, very raw, and they're very contentious, and they're very sensitive.
Talk about the jury, the makeup, 12 jurors, 6 alternates. One of them was late today, had some car trouble. 7 black women, 2 white women, 2 black men, 1 white man. Today was a slow start, to say the least. After the juror was late, they finally got going, and then the prosecution ran into some problems in the openings with several objections. They sent the jury out of the room and argued over this presentation that the prosecutor didn't share, and the judge had told the prosecutor to share. It went back and forth, back and forth. At one point, Judge Glanville, he was pretty upset. Take a listen as he basically says, "Don't try to hijack the bench."
And Ms. D. Williams, you should have made your motion, or should have told me about that an hour ago, or when you found out about it. Not hijack me at the bench about that. You did what you had to do, but I'm not happy about that. I'm not happy about any of this. And that makes you all, lessen your ability as advocates and lessen our ability for this jury to go ahead and get this case seamlessly. This is what I told you all was going to happen. Have you given them everything you're going to show them during opening statement?
My bottom line here is the judge gave everybody the lunch hour to figure it out. The state needs to share the PowerPoint that they have prepared, and he's threatened to take the presentation away and basically halt the state's opening statement if there are any more objections with teeth and or errors in which we did see in these initial slides. Put yourself, I don't know if you own one, but put a prosecutor hat on just for a second. And how horrible is this as a start? You've been waiting months for this. You're the lead, you're running out there addressing the jury, and your opening is just, I don't know if it could have gone any worse.
No, it couldn't have gone worse. You're right, Ted. That was awful. I had goosebumps when I was listening to that, because obviously we've all been on the receiving end of a tirade of a judge, sometimes justified, sometimes unjustified, and it could not have gone worse, right? Because I mean, she just got a tongue lashing by a judge, and that's the beginning of her case. It's not the middle. It's not the, well, it probably worse if it was the end, but that's how it began. It was off to a very bad start. I actually agree with the judge, but believe it or not, and he had to do it. He was very upset. He was very, very upset. And you know what? They should have known better. They should have been more prepared. And he even said, I warned you guys. I told you this would happen. And then you're catching me off guard. And, here's what's behind the scenes, right? So this judge and this prosecutor, and I don't know them personally, but every single criminal judge and prosecutor, they know each other. They practice with one another, right? So this is not the only case that this prosecutor has in front of this judge, this month, right? Prosecutors either work in the same building as a judge, or in a building adjacent to the judge, and they see the judges, and the judge, before he became a judge, he was either a prosecutor or defense attorney. So he knew that attorney before he became a judge. So they all grew up together in the profession. And so for him to give her a tongue lashing like that, that means he was very upset, and he privately had warned them not to put him in that situation. And they put him in that situation. He kind of felt disrespected.
Yeah, Michael, you make a good point. And just a lot of times then when you're doing your cases, you're in front of the same judge all the time when you do a lot of your cases. So you, as a prosecutor, you really get to know one another. He gets to know your style. And then, yeah, you had defense counsel up there calling, saying a liar. We talked about that one of the last segments. And I don't think that went over very well, to say the least. But, you know, Michael, in this case, you have a prosecutor, and prosecutors always have such a huge caseload. You are just trying to get through all of your cases. This is a big one here. And then you have a defense team that really, this is their only focus right now. It's kind of a disadvantage sometimes for those of us who are prosecutors when you then are thrown on some of these cases that you believe in, and then you have a defense team that's just huge.
Well, huge. You've got the whole state, and you've got an unlimited budget.
Ooh.
So I fully agree with you, by the way. Yeah, listen, I fully agree with you. You were a prosecutor, you know, so I fully agree with you. I don't know how anybody, I intentionally made it a career goal of mine to never be a prosecutor, because the job is extremely difficult, right? And I remember when we graduated law school back in 2006, a couple of buddies of mine, they became prosecutors. And back then, their salary was, $35,000 a year plus benefits. And they were working more hours than me. And it was crazy. So, yeah, no, it's very difficult to be a prosecutor from every angle. I agree with you.
All right, let's get a break. We're waiting for the judge to take the bench. As we approach the top of the hour, we'll slip in a break here.
I want to bring in our guest, trial attorney Michael Jaafar, to talk about what we are seeing here. Okay, Michael, a lot of rulings by the judge, defense counsel getting up there, wanting to bring in some things, this jumpsuit, talking about bias. What do you think?
Two things I've been wanting to say while we're looking at this case. Number one, I'm so impressed with the attorney, not the one defending Young Thug, but the one defending the other person, the taller man with the beard. He got the judge to change his mind. The judge literally looked at the bailiff, said, bring in the jury. We're going to do this without the PowerPoint. That attorney was single-handedly rescued that defense for both of the defendants, even though he's not defending both of them. Right, and I was so impressed with the way he explained it. But to answer your question directly, this shows you why the people who were up in arms and saying how are they going to use his rap lyrics in the court, this was your answer. You saw now the detail and diligence that all the participants and the judge went through before they allowed any of this evidence to come in. It's a very detailed, painstaking process. The judge disallowed some of the evidence, right? He disallowed for the other defendant to come in, his name and what he was charged with. So, I mean, this is the court process. This is what it's going to look like, and this is why due process is being protected. And it's not as simple as, hey, they're letting anyone use his rap lyrics. It's such a travesty. This was your answer. So it's off to a good start in terms of justice and due process. It's off to a good start from that perspective.
Good points, Michael. Okay, thank you. We were going to get in a quick break, but don't go anywhere. You're watching Court TV. Well, my time is up. We do want to say thank you to Michael Jaafar for joining me this hour. Coming up, Judge Ashley is going to pick up our coverage. Hi there, Judge Ashley.
Hey, always great to see you, Kelly. Of course, more from the prosecution's opening statement. Stay here, Court TV Live.